Now, fungi are everywhere. You may see mold on an old lemon in your fridge. It's a fungus. You may notice fungi on your mattress and the tiles in your bathroom. There may be several million species of fungi in the world, and most of them are unexplored. Of the fungus among us, some are pretty harmless, such as those that appear in the dark corner of your fridge, and others can turn a living creature into a zombie. And this is not some movie, but reality. Let's visit a rainforest to see how cordyceps fungus turns the life of some insects into a nightmare. A tiny, almost invisible fungus spore floats in the air and lands on the ant's back. It doesn't notice anything and works all day for the good of the colony. Meanwhile, the spore penetrates its body. A couple of days later, the ant's behavior gets strange. The poor thing shivers, it sleeps badly, and it doesn't eat enough. Other ants see it as a threat, so they expel their brother from the anthill. But the infected ant doesn't want to return because it can't control its life anymore. The fungus multiplies inside it. It spreads throughout the body through the insect's blood. It slowly captures the entire nervous system, begins to control the muscles, and affects the brain. Cordyceps change the ant's behavior and make it move in the direction it wants, against the ant's will. At this point, the animal turns into a zombie. It wanders through the forest alone and is looking for some high place. It can be a blade of grass, a plant, or a bush. Next, the ant climbs to a height of 10 inches and tightly grabs the stem with its jaws. Nothing can remove it from there because the ant can't relax its jaws anymore. The insect remains to wait there for several days. All this time, the fungus sort of feeds on the ant and grows slowly. It comes out of the ant from different sides, twists, and diverges in different directions. Then the parasite grows, pulls up, and releases thousands of small spores into the air. They fly all over the forest, fall into the water, or leaves, animal fur, or in the hair of people walking in the woods. In almost all of these places, spores don't live long, but some of them will find their host. Some spores can get on the area with working ants, and when the fungus lands on some of them, everything will start again. Now imagine that this tiny monster evolves and starts attacking people. Scientists said this was impossible since the human body temperature is too high for fungi. But after all, the temperature of the whole planet is gradually rising, right? This means that the fungus will adapt to warming. And when it happens, tiny spores will penetrate the human body through the ears, nose, and mouth and get into the blood. There, it will begin its reproduction and capture of the nervous system. The person will have a fever and then experience hallucinations. Soon, they will lose their sanity and want only one thing: to share the fungus with others. If the fungus can make an ant cling tightly to a leaf with its jaws, then it will be able to control people's muscles and even increase their strength. But infected people won't attack others. They'll climb on roofs of buildings or trees and fall asleep forever. The fungus, meanwhile, germinates and releases its spores. The wind picks them up and spreads them all over the world. During the first weeks of infection, while people are still not prepared enough, fungi will spread rapidly and take over the planet. The remnants of the survivors who manage to avoid contact will hide underground and then build bunkers. First, gas masks will become more valuable than gold. Still, when people realize that humankind's survival is more important than business, gas masks will become publicly available. As terrible as it may sound, all this is good news, because you don't have to run away from the infected and fight with them. All cities will introduce quarantine zones. People will live inside buildings with powerful air ventilation systems and go outside only with gas masks. If people understand they are infected, they will calmly inform the police and leave the city. They will get food supplies, and their loved ones will get permission to be with them in gas masks until the infected fall asleep. There will be fungi everywhere on the streets. You'll see how colossal mushroom plantations grow on the roofs and walls of buildings. The air will resemble a misty haze because of the intense concentration of fungal spores, but it's not dangerous if you have a gas mask. the zombie apocalypse will be pretty calm and quiet. But still, it will be difficult in the world, not because of the fungi, but because of other people. Not all cities will be in order. Anarchy will reign in the world. Looters and robbers in gas masks will walk on the streets. Food will take a lot of work to get. Electricity in cities won't run 24/7, but just a couple of hours per day. But all this time, there will be hope for a bright future in people's hearts. Scientists will actively work on a vaccine and invent it sooner or later. But the fungus will also evolve. Perhaps it will defeat the vaccine, and then people will have to create a new cure. Also, the fungus may try to switch to other carriers. These can be birds, livestock, and any mammals. Imagine an infected deer with a big growing fungus on its horns. Microorganisms will rule the world, and the population of large creatures will decrease. The fungus will adapt to the water for thousands of years and begin to infect the fish. And soon, the whole planet will turn into one giant mushroom. Okay, calm down, that's not going to happen. And here's why. Cordyceps have spent millions of years of evolution to adapt precisely to the cold body of an ant, no more, no less. The fungus's internal abilities are designed only to infect certain insects living next to them. For example, cordyceps from Thailand can infect an ant somewhere in Los Angeles. Therefore, don't worry that it will suddenly become able to attack a human. There is no suddenness in evolution. It's a long and challenging process. In addition, the fungus has no reason to switch to warm-blooded carriers. It feels fine in the environment of ants and has no problems with multiplying. If ants disappear as a species and people start living next to the fungus, it will begin evolution, but it may take thousands or even millions of years of genetic changes. However, don't relax yet. There is a type of fungi that has met all the conditions to gain the ability to infect humans. It's called Candida auris. It was discovered in Japan in 2009 and shocked scientists when they found it inside people. Biologists said the fungus could evolve because of rising temperatures in some areas. A few years later, the fungus was found in many countries around the world. Antifungal medications do little to help against it. Its symptoms are difficult to determine at the beginning, and the consequences of its infection can be severe, especially in people with poor immunity. Scientists are concerned about this microorganism, but are already making a vaccine. The medicine helped to defeat the fungus in mice, and soon doctors hope to release a vaccine for humans. Infection occurs through human fluids, blood, saliva, and sputum. Fungi are a separate kingdom on our planet, but not all of them are bad. They're necessary for our Earth to support life. They enrich the soil with valuable substances and digest harmful substances. Fungi help plants get out of the water and adapt to land millions of years ago. 90% of plants won't survive today without fungi. There are organisms that look like huge nets. These networks of special tubes are called mycelium. We only see the tip of the iceberg, which is called mushrooms. It doesn't have one form. It can transform, move through underground labyrinths, and change routes. There's a lot of information about it, but this is a topic for a separate video. Meanwhile, mushrooms are delicious when sautéed over a low flame with onions and butter. Try it.
The king cobra, black widow, giant hornet, scorpion, and the horsefly. They can all bite, sting, and inject venom into your body. It usually hurts. You experience burning sensations. Your body might react unpredictably. But if you hurry, doctors will help you. The bite site will hurt for a few days, but then you'll forget about it. But what if you get a sting that you can never forget, caused by a plant that looks absolutely unremarkable? You may not even notice touching it, but your body will react immediately. Just being near this plant can cause choking and coughing. Your eyes will start watering. But if you accidentally touch it, well, the pain will last for several days, weeks, months, or several years. Even after a long time, this unpleasant feeling can return at unexpected moments. You'll remember coming across this plant for the rest of your life, that's for sure. And this is not a cactus with sharp needles I'm talking about. Neither is it poison ivy. At first glance, this is an ordinary green bush with broad leaves. The good news is that this plant only grows in particular areas in Australia. It's called the Gympie Gympie. Gold miners discovered it in 1860 near the town of Gympie. And most likely, it was an unpleasant find. Before you go to the forest to search for this plant, you need to put on a protective mask, and you'd better opt for a gas mask or respirator, thick clothes, and sturdy boots. Tuck your pant legs inside your boots, wear protective gloves, and you're all set. You don't have to go far into the wild. This plant grows on the edge of the forest, next to streams. You pass by some trees and come closer to the water. Here, in a dense thicket, you notice this dangerous bush. It can grow up to 10 feet tall, and its dark green heart-shaped leaves with jagged edges can grow up to 1.5 feet wide. This plant can easily be confused with nettle or burdock. The only thing that can help identify Gympie Gympie is a thin layer of fluff covering its leaves. It's like it's encouraging you to stroke it. But don't fall into this trap. This is not fluff. It's tiny toxic hairs. They're not only on the leaves, but also fly around the plant. If you remove your gas mask, you'll feel as if ground pepper has got into your nose. You'll have an uncontrollable sneezing fit. Your nose will itch. It'll become difficult to breathe. Your tongue will swell. Your eyes will feel as if they're on fire. And if you stay there for some time, this plant will seriously damage your health. For many years, the Gympie Gympie caused huge problems to loggers and hunters. Even when they knew about its existence, they often accidentally touched it while working. This was enough to make people sick for several weeks. There were cases where sting sites hurt for decades. One man said he felt pain for 2 years after touching the plant. He experienced extremely unpleasant sensations every time he took a cold shower. People compare this feeling to the sting of 30 wasps simultaneously. And the worst thing is that doctors can hardly help in this situation. Even an old dried leaf lying on the ground presents a serious danger. You can drop your phone or glove, try to pick it up, and accidentally touch the Gympie Gympie leaf. To study it, you need to use a pair of tweezers to take a leaf and put it in a vacuum-sealed container. Done! Now you can transport your sample to the laboratory and reveal its secrets. The Gympie Gympie is one of the 6 species of stinging trees native to Australia. It grows in the sun, surrounded by other plants. And, most surprisingly, there are holes in its leaves. But before we find out what creatures feed on one of the most dangerous plants in the world, let's study its poison. The bush is covered with tiny hairs, and even one of these hairs can cause big problems. It's so thin and small that it can penetrate your skin and stay there for several months or even years. Water doesn't wash it out. It only enhances the effect of the poison. A tip of the hair opens up when it comes into contact with some surface. Then it injects a potent toxin. After that, you feel a burning sensation. Half an hour later, the feeling gets worse. Your skin starts pulsating and turns red. You never know how long the effect is going to last. It all depends on the number of hairs you've come into contact with. But what precisely is this toxin? How can it cause so many problems? Scientists still don't know for sure. They can't say which components of the poison cause the burning. The effect of the toxin lasts for a long time. High or cold temperatures don't stop it. After a few years, you can put pressure on the affected spot and feel that the poisonous hairs are still there. Pluck one leaf and throw it on the ground. Then come back 100 years later and touch this leaf. You'll feel the unpleasant sting again. The botanical samples of the Gympie Gympie still remain dangerous in many laboratories. With such toxic leaves, Gympie Gympie may be the most protected plant in the world. But some creatures still feed on its poisonous leaves. And one of these creatures is a species of ordinary nocturnal beetles. They can eat Gympie Gympie nonstop, and they don't care about its poisonous hairs at all. The toxin just doesn't affect these insects. This is the perfect meal for them because no animal will dare to attack the bugs sitting on the gimpy gimpy, except for the red-legged patamelon who lives in the forests of Australia. It looks like a mini kangaroo. This cute animal also feeds on the poisonous plant, and no one knows how the patamelon protects itself from the toxins. But unlike these fearless creatures, people have to install warning signs around these dangerous territories and wear special clothing and masks not to get harmed by the plant. And those who have come close to the gimpy gimpy have to wash their clothes right afterward. Poisonous hairs are likely to remain on their pants and jackets. So you've seen one of the most poisonous plants in the world. But what about the most poisonous tree? We leave Australia and move to Florida. Imagine you're somewhere in a tropical forest near the Caribbean coast. It starts raining, and you decide to hide under a tree. Of course, this is already a bad idea, since lightning can strike the tree. But you should worry about something different this time. The tree seems ordinary. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruits similar to small apples. You stand next to it for a few seconds and feel your skin starting to burn. It feels as if drops of acid are falling from the sky. But no, it's still rainwater. But when a drop touches the surface of the tree, it gets filled with poison. Next, it bounces off the trunk, hits your skin, and causes the burning sensation. Never stand near a manchineel tree, and don't pluck its leaves and fruit either. The trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain toxic juice. Even if the weather is warm and sunny, don't come close. The tree bark secretes toxins too. You may notice there's almost nothing growing around the tree. Mushrooms, shrubs, flowers, and other trees can't exist nearby. Animals also avoid this place. The poison produced by the manchineel tree is resistant to water and fire. That's why burning tree branches is also a bad idea. The smoke is very dangerous, especially for your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists can easily get hurt. That's why people mark manchineel trees with paint as a warning. The gimpy gimpy and manchineel trees are scary plants. But the giant hogweed can be considered the king among toxic plants. Yeah, touching it can cause a severe allergic reaction, burning sensations, and whatnot. But the worst thing is that the giant hogweed is one of the fastest growing weeds in the world. Its seeds don't need long to develop and take over any territory. It quickly became one of the main invasive plant species in the world. The hogweed can affect entire ecosystems. The plant grows faster than others, displacing its competitors from their territories by harming them with poison. People spend a lot of money to fight this parasitic plant. If its seeds get into your garden, they'll occupy it in no time, and it'll be pretty challenging to get rid of them. These huge plants were initially considered exotic. People used to buy and grow them to decorate their gardens. But then, hogweed seeds managed to escape, and a real invasion began. The plant can spray its seeds over a vast area when you cut it, and the wind can carry them even further away to neighboring territories. Scientists still haven't come up with an easy and cheap way to deal with this weed. Who do you think will win? A hungry grizzly or a ripe berry? An angry tiger or a beautiful flower? A huge python or a green bush? The answer's not so obvious. Now you'll see who really controls the jungle and forests. Meet the most dangerous plants on Earth. This is the water hemlock. It grows in North America in swampy areas of fields and meadows. Also, you can find this plant on the shores of rivers and streams. It seems harmless, but it's one of the most poisonous plants in the U.S. Water hemlock toxins can cause critical damage to an adult in 15 minutes, but only if you swallow it. Many people mistakenly confuse it with artichoke, celery, and anise. Despite the dangerous poison, water hemlock is used to cure migraines and intestinal diseases. This plant has caused a lot of damage to livestock. White snakeroot grows in fields and pastures. When a cow bites it, the plant releases a fat-soluble toxin. This poison gets not only inside the animal, but also into the milk. Young calves who drink the milk also become infected. Poisoned milk is also dangerous for people. The problem is that this plant, native to North America, is one of the longest-lived autumn flowers. Now in modern farms, the poison of this plant is not so dangerous, but on small private pastures, white snakeroot is the #1 danger. We all know two kinds of beans, the ones we eat and the ones that Jack used to get to the realm of giants. In addition to them, there are poisonous ones. These are called castor beans. They contain one of the most dangerous toxins in the world, ricin. As soon as it enters your body, it blocks the production of proteins necessary for life. Without these proteins, your cells stop functioning. The more cells are destroyed, the more your body suffers. The castor bean releases ricin when squeezed. Several beans can cause dehydration, weakness, hallucinations, seizures, and other problems. About 7 beans are enough to cause critical damage. So remember what they look like and never touch them if you see them in the woods. One of the most beautiful plants on the planet is also one of the most dangerous. This is oleander. Everything is poisonous in it: the stem, the root, and the pink flower. Even a tiny piece of this plant can lead to severe poisoning. It doesn't need to get inside your stomach to create severe problems. Just a little touch to the juice of the flower causes allergies. And don't try to burn it, as the smoke of a burning oleander has toxic effects too. And now, the most dangerous plant in the world. One touch of it will hurt you for several years, or you may feel the consequences all your life. The gimpy plant, also called the Queensland stinger, looks like an ordinary burdock bush. It doesn't look like anything poisonous at all, but if you stand next to this plant, you'll feel suffocation and watery eyes. There are thousands of tiny poisonous hairs on the leaves of this flower. They're so light, they can hang in the air and spread by the wind, so you should put on a gas mask if you want to look at the plant. But if you lightly touch gimpy, you're in big trouble. Some compare one gimpy sting to 30 wasp stings at the same time. Poisonous hairs easily penetrate under your skin and cause irritation and pain. The problem is that you can't pull them out. Wash with soap and water, use some disinfecting ointment, and you'll see that the situation is only worsening. The hairs can't be pulled out of there. They sit there, releasing toxins and driving you crazy. There's no antidote because scientists still don't know what components the toxin consists of. It can withstand cold and hot temperatures. Unpleasant sensations can last for several hours, days, or even months. People who touched the plant said that the pain from the sting returned even after a few years. But if it's impossible to get rid of the hairs, then the only way out is to wait for them to lose their toxicity. But there's another problem here. You can tear off one gimpy leaf with gloves and put it in the laboratory, dry it, and forget about it for a few years. And here it lies in front of you, a withered, almost destroyed leaf. It seems harmless, but it's not. Even after many years, the poisonous hairs remain on the leaf surface and still cause toxin effects. Gimpy only grows in Australia. It loves the sun and dense green forests. It used to pose a severe danger to tourists and loggers. But now, all places with this plant are marked with a warning sign. At botanical exhibitions, scientists put this plant in a cage so people wouldn't touch it. Rosary peas can be white seeds with a black eye or black seeds with a white eye. You can find these plants in Africa, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific Ocean region. Some species were transported to Florida and Hawaii by people. You could encounter this plant even on city streets. Rosary pea seeds are used in jewelry and some toys. People who wear rosary pea bracelets probably don't know about its seeds' toxicity. Rosary peas, as well as the castor bean, contribute to the destruction of cells. Interestingly, rosary pea seeds are used not only as decorations, but also for healing certain health conditions. This is the only poisonous plant from the list that looks poisonous. You probably won't want to pick it up when you notice it. See this red stem that looks more like an artery or an enlarged nervous system? And those berries are similar to eyes. Doll's eye looks a little creepy. Their internal structure is also as unpleasant as their appearance. Doll's eye has a dangerous toxin. The longer they grow, the more poisonous their composition gets. Doll's eye chemicals have a sedative effect on muscles and hearts. This means that your body relaxes so much that it stops working. You've probably seen this plant in reality or wildlife movies. Venus flytraps are rare representatives of carnivorous plants. Fortunately, they're not as dangerous for humans as for insects. But in any case, you shouldn't stick your finger in them. So here's how they work. The plant opens its mouth. There's a red petal with a fragrant smell in its middle. It's a decoy. A fly or some beetle notices this and decides to try it. They climb inside the flower. But the Venus flytrap doesn't immediately get closed. Tiny sensitive hairs inside the plant count the movements of the fly. If the fly has made more than 2 movements within 20 seconds, the plant closes its mouth in less than a second. This interval prevents the Venus flytrap from needlessly slamming when some garbage lands there. Then the fly becomes trapped. The bristles on the plant's jaws work like a cage. Prey cannot escape. Then the Venus flytrap injects digestive juice into its mouth, which destroys the fly. 5 to 12 days later, the plant opens again and waits for a new lunch. The Venus flytrap can eat flies, beetles, spiders, and even little frogs. Giant hogweed causes the most extensive damage among all plants. It's dangerous not specifically for one person, but for entire forests and fields. Giant hogweed is an invasive plant. It's like a parasite. It multiplies quickly and destroys all other flowers in the area. Insects don't feed on giant hogweed. It's also problematic for people to destroy it, since giant hogweed causes an allergic reaction on the skin. It grows quickly, it's immune to poisons, and lives long. Giant hogweed can reach the height of a 1-story house and be deeply rooted in the ground. It releases its seeds, and a light breeze spreads them for miles. Scientists still can't create an effective way to combat it. There's nothing that can defeat giant hogweed in nature. Well, not yet. Nature and evolution always find a balance.
You're in your car driving back home when you see some dogs up for adoption. You figure, why not rescue a cute pooch and give it a warm home? You pull over and see a massive Goliath of a dog. It's got pointy ears and huge paws. Its eyes are deep and sharp. You're staring at a wolf-dog hybrid. This can happen in the wild, and it's pretty common to see in many households. It's actually the most common wild and domesticated animal cross out there, with an estimated 400,000 of these as pets in the United States alone. There are many combinations of these animals, but the most common are gray wolves mixed with German shepherds or Siberian huskies. These crosses may seem majestic, but they're really dangerous to have around the house. Many cases were reported of wolf dogs attacking their owners for random and unpredictable reasons. It's best to leave these doggos alone. And speaking of wild doggos, some of the most dangerous ones out there also look quite adorable. You better keep some distance if you ever come across one of these, because they will chase after you. They're even called the kings of Australia, the one and only dingo. These animals have been around for hundreds of years across Southeast Asia to Australia. Their golden brown color blends with their surroundings, making them even more dangerous when lurking around for prey. And just like a wolf-dog hybrid, many dingoes are also bred with domesticated dogs to create a dingo-doggo combo. Yeah, I said that. Now, that may sound cute, but they're anything but. They're still wild animals that hunt in packs and are ruthless even to humans. Now this one may seem like a no-brainer, but there are enthusiasts out there who keep venomous snakes in their houses. Not everyone can handle those serpents since they need proper care and attention. Some states even banned owning them. Sure, it may be pretty cool to show off one of these to a group of friends at a party, but stats show that there are at least 10,000 snake bites a year in the United States. Some of these are pets. Snake handling professionals equip themselves with proper gear and tools when extracting them from unwanted areas. So having one in the house on purpose is risky enough. And there are many venomous snakes in the wild that are actually in danger and shouldn't be kept at home unless for nurturing. When first introducing this animal, explorers described it as a mix of a duck, a beaver, and an otter the size of a house cat that laid eggs. Come again? Scientists brushed the platypus off as fiction until they saw it with their own eyes. Cute as it may be, this weird mammal is actually venomous. On its webbed back feet, its heels hold spurs for self-defense and to escape and wiggle their way out of danger. As you can imagine, keeping a venomous duck-billed beaver isn't something you should do, even though they look so adorable as babies. Platypuses are extremely hard to take care of and need massive amounts of real estate to swim and roam around. They're really picky with their diet and can be quite aggressive when handling them, but they might make a good secret agent. Owning a cat isn't usually a big deal, unless you're dealing with a serval. These wild cats are bigger than the typical house cat and look like little leopards. Yeah, they look majestic and like to jump from place to place, but they're still not highly recommended to keep at home. They've been known to cause a ruckus in the house and rip up curtains and couches with their claws. They rarely listen to humans and are aggressive when played with. They're very clever and need loads of places to climb and explore, and do all kinds of serval things. A slow loris is just an animal you want to hug all day. Its large, bulging eyes make you want to cry for joy. The way it grabs onto branches with its tiny hands brings smiles to everyone. And it does it all so slowly. But there's a dark secret to handling these primates. They're endangered and illegal. And even though they look oh so cute to handle, they're actually in extreme distress. They're night animals and can't handle too much interaction. And it's enough knowing they're actually venomous. They're the only primates in the world to have a toxic bite that can pack a hurtful punch. At least it won't be hard outrunning these creatures. Koalas are also animals that enjoy climbing tree branches and eating. But having one of these at home is totally unadvisable. These animals are very protective of their young and aggressive if they feel threatened. And despite being called koala bears, they're not related to bears at all. They're marsupials, or in English, related to kangaroos and wombats. And like kangaroos, they have pouches for the babies to grow up in. They have opposable thumbs like primates and humans to grab onto branches and climb. Trying to domesticate these animals won't work, and feeding them is the main reason they can't live with humans. They need special eucalyptus leaves that grow in forests in order to survive, which means they need large forest ranges to thrive. What do you get when you have a possum-looking animal the size of your palm with wings? Nope, not a bat, but a sugar glider. And they don't actually have wings, so they don't technically fly. Bats still hold the record for the only winged mammal out there. Rather, these marsupials have a thick layer of skin that stretches from their hands to their back ankles that acts like a glider. Their thick furry tails are used to steer themselves while gliding down. And while they might seem cute and superhero-like, they don't belong indoors with people. They're animals that are naturally born to live in big families with their own kind. When people get these animals as pets, they usually have one or two at home, and they need trees to scale up and glide down. Not to mention sugar gliders are nocturnal and sleep all day to be active at night, which goes against humans, unless you're a night owl. And speaking of owls and other nocturnal creatures, owls are animals that shouldn't be kept in cages or in barns. We've all fantasized about an owl carrying a letter to our windows when we were younger. But that doesn't mean owls are these magical creatures that can be kept as pets. For starters, owls are solitary creatures and don't understand a flock mentality like many other birds, which is why they're not accustomed to having company and being cuddled with daily. And if you decided to keep an owl indoors, then consider your furniture gone. Owls need space to fly around and do owlish things. So your curtains, pillows, and bookshelves won't be spared. And being nocturnal animals, owls tend to throw the biggest parties at night when everyone's sleeping. Now, hedgehogs may seem like the perfect pet to have around the house, but they come with some restraints. Although adorable little animals, the prickly spikes on their backs may not be for the faint-hearted. Many injuries can be a result of mishandling and the fact that they roll up into a cute ball for self-defense. They're solitary creatures as well, and can't be around other hedgehogs or anything they might find threatening. And, like most solitude lovers, hedgehogs are nocturnal and like to go for late-night cruises alone. So, if you do happen to get one of these spike balls, make sure to have a lot of room for it to explore daily. With a ringed tail, reddish-brown color, these fluff balls make the best cuddle companions out there. I mean, who can resist the cuteness of the red panda? And no, it's not related to the giant panda, but it's still as cute. And I don't mean to burst your bubble, but it's best to leave these creatures alone. They're found in Southeast Asia in dense rainforests and can't be in captivity. And just like cats, they have sharp claws that'll redecorate your home interior, and not in a good way. When threatened, they release a foul odor to escape from danger. Hey, I can relate. Although its big fluffy ears make it even more irresistible, it's best to let these guys do their own thing.
Imagine you're hanging out somewhere in the forests of Australia. You're thirsty, so you go to the nearest stream. Suddenly, you feel that you have a runny nose. It's strange because you're perfectly healthy. You stop and wait. A few seconds pass. Your nose is itching. A few minutes pass. Your eyes are watering. Your throat is going crazy. You can't breathe freely, and you're constantly sneezing. It seems you're breathing poisoned air. But what's poisoning it? The smallest particles of the most dangerous plant in the world are flying around you. It's called Gimpy Gimpy. There it is. It looks ordinary, a small bush with green stems and leaves. The closer you come, the worse you're feeling. You need more air, and your skin is turning red. It physically hurts you to be here. You may lose consciousness if you stay here for a little bit more. Do you know what will happen if you touch this plant? Well, it will feel like red-hot needles penetrating your skin. And even if you run away as far as possible from here right now, the pain will not subside. The effects of the sting will last for several hours. Days will pass, and the pain will remain. Weeks and months will pass, but you'll still feel it. You can wash the touch area with cold water and soap, but this won't help a lot. It might not go away for several years. And all those tiny plant hairs that penetrated your skin can stay with you forever. The toxicity of Gimpy Gimpy is so high that even if you tear off one leaf and touch it after a year, it will still cause damage to your body. The bad news is that this plant is hard to spot. You can easily confuse it with burdock or nettle. Just imagine what will happen if someone falls into the bush. Its distinctive feature is a thin layer of fluff on each leaf. But be careful. This fluff consists of thousands of poisonous hairs. They also fly around the plant, so it's dangerous to be here without a gas mask. An ordinary medical mask won't help here, since the hairs can get through the fabric. The good news is, there aren't many of them around the world, and people usually put warning signs near them. This bad guy grows in Australia. Gold miners discovered this plant in 1860, near the town of Gympie. And something is telling me it wasn't the happiest discovery. Even now, Gimpy Gimpy poses a serious danger to loggers and tourists. You may accidentally touch it with your hand. One touch is enough to make you lose your working capacity for several weeks. In some cases, the affected area continues to hurt for decades. One man fell into the bush and lost his mind because of the pain. People compare a gimpy sting with a bite of 30 wasps at the same time, and you won't know how to get rid of it. One guy experienced an unpleasant feeling every time he took a shower for 2 years after touching this plant. If you want to study it, you need to wear a protective suit and a gas mask. There should be no open areas on your body. Tuck your pant legs into your boots, put on protective gloves, and move out into the forest. It grows on the edge, next to streams. Gimpy is one of the 6 species of poisonous trees native to Australia. They love the sun and the vegetation around them. Every hair on the surface of the leaf is poisoned. When it contacts any surface, it opens and sprays a burning toxin. Then, the pain increases and the skin turns red. The duration of the effect depends on the number of hairs that penetrate your body. After a few years, you can put pressure on the bite site and feel the hairs are still there. There's no antidote because scientists still don't know what the toxic poison's components are. All they know is that the poison effect lasts a very long time, several years. It can withstand cold and hot temperatures. Water only enhances its effect. Botanical samples of this plant in laboratories are still dangerous, despite scientists keeping them for several years. After you have passed by Gimpy, don't forget to disinfect yourself. Carefully remove clothes, shoes, masks, and glasses. Put a protective suit in the washing machine and wash everything else well. Tiny hairs can be in your pants or the sleeves of your jacket, so be careful. This toxicity makes Gimpy the most protected plant in the world. But wait, what's that? Do you see these little holes on its leaves? It seems that someone is eating it. These are the usual nocturnal beetle species. They can devour Gimpy all day long, as the poisonous hairs can't harm them. These bugs just don't care. Gimpy is the perfect lunch, as no one can disturb these beetles while they're sitting on this plant. And yes, all the animals living nearby know that it's better not to get close to it. But there's one mammal that is not afraid of Gimpy. It's a red-legged patamelon. It looks like a little kangaroo and loves to eat the Gimpy leaves. Scientists still don't know what exactly protects this animal from toxic hairs. We know almost all the places where this plant grows. People mark them with signs. If you see one, just don't go there. Gimpy is a terrible plant, but how about a plant that can take over the whole world and destroy all the crops? It doesn't need favorable conditions for growth. It can survive in the rain, in arid places under the scorching sun, at low and high temperatures. It's called the giant hogweed. If the seed of this plant gets into a vegetable bed or a wheat field, the plant will displace all competitors in a few weeks. The wind can blow on the giant hogweed seeds and spread them further to the nearest territories. This plant can worsen ecosystems around the world. It grows faster than people manage to destroy it. If you spray poison on the leaves, it doesn't even care. If you let parasitic beetles into giant hogweed territory, it doesn't care either. It multiplies very fast and lives longer than many plants. The giant hogweed can reach the height of a one-story house and go deep underground with its roots. It's also dangerous to touch it with your hands. It can turn your skin red, and it won't feel good, to say the least. That's how it's making it so hard to fight against it. This poison destroys any plants, bushes, and flowers nearby. Scientists still can't create an effective poison to combat this green monster. No beetles feed on it. That's why the giant hogweed is one of the most dangerous plants in the world. It simply has no enemies in nature. But scientists are sure that evolution will create some creatures capable of destroying the giant hogweed. It can be small bugs or parasitic bacteria. But until that happens, people have to fight this beast on their own. They spend millions of dollars trying to destroy the plant, but it doesn't always work out. You can burn a field, but if one seed remains, it will quickly grow on the scorched ground. You've seen some of the most dangerous plants in the world, but what about trees? A manchineal tree grows in Florida. Its trunk secretes toxic juice that's dangerous for your skin. but it gets much worse during the rain. When water falls on the bark, it mixes with the poison. Then, these poison drops can bounce off the tree and get on your skin. Leaves and fruits also have this toxin, so never hide under this tree in bad weather. Mushrooms, shrubs, and flowers don't grow near this tree either. Animals never come close to it. Birds never sit on its branches. Manchineel trees are resistant to water and high temperatures. Never try to burn it. The smoke released during combustion is toxic and dangerous to your eyes. The locals mark this tree with red circles.
Your heart is racing. You're running for your life from one of the biggest creatures you've ever seen. A giant reptile on 2 legs, sprinting right behind you. You hear the sound of a raging river next to you, but decide not to jump in. Thick leaves and bushes keep blocking your path, and you keep getting stuck in the mud. Everything around you is out to get you, and there's nowhere to hide. You spot a hollowed-out tree trunk and crawl inside. Whatever's out there is getting closer and closer. You hear deep guttural breathing and huge stomping. It's getting closer. You see a large tail from a crack in the tree trunk, swinging and knocking down bushes and small trees. Whatever it is, it's sniffing you out like those dogs at the airport. And right next to your face are giant bugs the size of a house cat. Perfect. You've always been scared to even look at crawly little things, but this one's so close and so big, you can actually see its facial features. It's looking at you like you're the alien. You want to scream, but can't. Then, out of the darkness, more bugs. They're curious things, flicking their antennas all over your body. Okay, this is too much. A bug is one thing, but now, a giant centipede thing is crawling your way. Its fangs are the size of your thumb. You dart out of the tree trunk and come face to face with a giant monster. It stops and stares at you, knowing you have no place to go. Claws and teeth the size of bowling pins. That's enough to keep you up at night. It's getting ready to charge right at you. Welcome to the most dangerous period and area in history for a human, the mid-Cretaceous Sahara. This place was thriving around 100 million years ago in what would now be North Africa. Back then, the continents were all arranged differently, and the weather was wild. Extreme storms were pretty common, and temperatures would rise and fall like a Mexican wave at a soccer stadium. Then, sea levels started to rise. Water flooded the Kem region, an area between modern-day Algeria and Morocco. Over the next millions of years, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, and other natural disasters wiped out everything else. Bye-bye, dinosaurs. Thanks for playing. You probably think of the Sahara as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, but back when it had trees and rivers, it was even more dangerous. The famous River of Giants was a huge river system that stretched from modern-day Egypt all the way to Morocco. The land was flat and not much vegetation grew there, but it was enough for life to exist. Frightening, scary life. That creature you're staring at, it's a giant, scary-looking theropod, and it's out to get you. Imagine a T-Rex-like dinosaur that's more than 32 feet tall and has an epic jawline. Scary stuff. They were the top dogs in the food chain back then. And that's why this place and period in history was so unique. The entire area had an incredible imbalance between hungry dinos and poor little dino snacks. There wasn't enough food to go around. Scientists were never able to find much evidence of herbivores. That means it might have been a royal rumble of carnivorous creatures waiting to pounce on each other at any moment. So, after a while of having a stare-down contest with a giant theropod, a shadow creeps up on you from behind. You're too scared to turn around, but the growling is louder than anything you've ever heard. It shakes you to the core. You turn around and see a Spinosaurus, and that's about all you can see. You know how they always show the T-Rex as the king of the dinosaurs? Well, this one would be, what, the emperor? It stands about 50 feet tall and has a sail of scales on its back, the size of a regular human. Then add in a crocodile-style snout with razor-sharp teeth and some short, powerful legs. Its diet mainly consists of river fish, but it's looking at you like you're a delicious fish taco. The two alphas are now in a standoff, with you stuck in the middle. But before you close your eyes and get ready to be eaten, they begin fighting each other, knocking down trees. You tiptoe your way out of there and run. The further you go, the better, right? Wrong. Not here, because everywhere you go, there's gonna be something dangerous. During this period, there was danger in the sky, in the water, and on land. There were small mammals scurrying around here and there, but they mostly stayed in the shadows to avoid danger. After 5 minutes of running as fast as humanly possible, you make it out of the forest and onto an open plain. Bad move. Now there's nowhere to hide. Suddenly, you hear another shriek. You look behind you. Nothing. It's just short grass everywhere. Then you tilt your head up to the sky and see what looks like a giant bird. Only these are technically flying crocodiles. There were plenty of huge pterosaurs that ruled the skies. Alanqua saharica was a flying reptile that may have eaten fish in the river. Those fish must have been tasty. It had a huge wingspan and long, slender jaws. Oh, and it was the size of a small bus. This one found you and is racing down to catch you. You run for your life, again. And this time, there's no place to hide. Suddenly, you feel talons grasping onto you and you're lifted off the ground. You soar up. If you weren't scared out of your mind, you might have noticed how beautiful the giant river channels below you are. The Alanqua maneuvers like a fighter jet, headed for the mountains, dodging all obstacles. You see a large nest with some mini beasts in it. They're hungry and as large as you. Not a great combination. You try to break free, but it's impossible. The creature drops you in the middle of the nest and flies off. You try to cover yourself, but the little ones keep pecking away. It's only a matter of time before it's too late. You look down below you and see the river. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's got a really strong current. You're out of options. You dive into the raging river and get dragged along with the current. Safe for now-ish. Imagine it's 2021. You're walking along one of the hottest and driest places on Earth, the middle of the Sahara Desert, only to find fossils of oversized fish. They ranged from bite size to bus size. Even freshwater sharks lived there. These weren't your average little fishies. Judging by their teeth, those guys meant business. You might even find a giant sea turtle swimming around. Okay, back to your wacky adventure. Luckily, you wash up on a safe sandy part of the river where you're able to relax. You drink some river water and try to find a safe place to make camp. Every noise you hear makes you jump. You sit down and try to enjoy the calmness of ancient Earth. Just when you feel you can finally catch your breath, you see a Spinosaurus walking along the river on the prowl. You run off and hide under a bush. It passes you by. You're safe. Or not. It turns, shakes the bushes, and sees you. Just then, a large boom scares it away. It's the sound of you jolting awake. You turn on the light and see your cat staring at you. Those dinosaurs seem so real, probably because of that documentary you were watching right before bed. The entire mid-Cretaceous ecosystem depended on rivers for daily life. Just like all ancient civilizations, rivers were essential for the creatures of the time. And very recently, scientists discovered a new species of snakes that went extinct back then, with no known descendants. To understand these ancient ecosystems, it's important to know a lot about fossils. You might find two different fossils side by side, but those animals might have lived millions of years apart.
So, this woman was peacefully finishing her fancy lunch with friends in Chelsea when she spotted they weren't alone at their table. There was a sewer rat. Hey, welcome to New York. Brooklyn alone houses over 1 million rats. Even luxurious Manhattan is swarming, with around 500,000 of them. Overall, around 3 million gray critters are currently munching on the Big Apple. Oh, rats. There used to be untouched land patches that were home to these animals. But with development and construction, they were forced to move into cities and suburbs. It's one of the reasons why the rat population in NYC grew by 800% over the last 65 years. Not only may rats be gross, but they're also seriously dangerous. According to estimates, rats are to blame for 40 to 60% of all bird and reptile extinction. They're now after people. In 2021, 14 New Yorkers were diagnosed with conditions caused by pathogens transmitted by rats, with one of them sadly passing away due to that. Back in the 50s, there were only about 250,000 brown rats in New York. In 2015, it was already 2 million, and today it's 1 million more. These long-tailed New Yorkers have been roaming the city since the 18th century. Rats embarked on ships in Europe and traveled visa-free to the States. Their first stop was supposedly New York City, and they firmly settled down there. The brown rat's lifespan may not be long, only around 2 years, but these creatures are ready to reproduce when they reach the age of 2 months. It only takes them 2 seconds to mate, and they normally give birth to 8 to 10 little ones. Plus, they can have litters around 6 times each year. Well, I'll do the math for you. It means that one single rat can recreate 120 new rats. So this lightning-speed breeding is another reason for the current infestation. Unfortunately, these critters aren't as adorable as Remy from Ratatouille. They can fight one another, and some of them have missing parts of their tails and eyes. And they've got extremely sharp and hard teeth. Rats can even gnaw through the concrete walls of our houses and destroy our cars with their bites. Their teeth are 5.5 on Moore's scale, which means they're harder than steel and can even be compared to an actual knife. They're also great escape artists. Rats can jump 4 feet across and 3 feet high, and their dugouts normally have 3 exits, the main one and 2 just-in-case ones, which makes them pretty hard to catch. However, seems like one rat didn't escape, causing the Chicago rat hole. It started attracting tourists after a tweet by a comedian went viral in January 2024. The hole was eventually filled in, but later restored by a local. There is a slight chance it might have been a squirrel, but the mass media insists it was indeed the rat. Still, it's not unusual that notorious rat stories appeared in New York City headlines. The first time was in 1860, and 5 years later, the New York Times mentioned that the Big Apple was already getting a notorious reputation for having more rats than any other city in the Union. In 1893, electric trolleys burst onto the scene, kicking those old horse-drawn ones to the curb. So rats had to bounce from their cozy stables where they've been chowing down on grains and set their sights on human residences. It didn't take long for these furry troublemakers to make a beeline for Rikers Island, which was turned into a dumping ground in 1894. Rats even had the audacity to feast on fresh veggies, pigs, and other farm animals at the farm that sprouted on the island later on. Fast forward to the 1930s, when these adventurous rats grew some courage and started swimming to other parts of New York, even finding their way to the fancy neighborhoods of Long Island. But the real panic started in 1997, when estimates claim there were 28 million rats in New York. That was a bit far-fetched, but the real number today looks horrifying either way. Still, even taking into account all those rat superpowers, it might not be very clear why their population has grown that much. The answer can be found in almost any supermarket, and it's a simple plastic bag. They got popular in the 50s, and in 1971, the city introduced plastic trash bags. Before, there used to be metal cans for waste that were pretty hard to get in. But with the appearance of plastic bags, which were super easy to gnaw through, all the trash out there became way more accessible for rats. Plus, a little rat doesn't need much food, just an ounce a day will do. So they were well provided. Climate change took its toll too. Even though rats do not hibernate in winter, a cold climate would slow down their reproductive cycles. However, with warmer temperatures, it got much easier for them to breed, even in the winter. But New York City is really stepping up its game this year. The authorities made some cool changes to prevent garbage from just chilling out on the streets for hours on end. They've tweaked their trash takeout times for both businesses and residents. But that's not all. The Big Apple has also put some rules in place for all food-related spots in town. which is around 40,000 bodegas, restaurants, delis, and grocery stores. Now, they have to dispose of their food waste in secure containers instead of just tossing it in flimsy trash bags on the street. And in Washington, D.C., the authorities allocated $3.4 million for 2024 to start replacing those old bins with newer and bigger ones. In 2022, New York City tried to recruit a rat czar, someone that would be in charge of rodent migration, offering up to $170,000 for the job. The next year, Kathleen Karate was appointed to this position. Now, you may live in the best neighborhood, but there's no guarantee you won't have rats in your house. If you disagree to have such roommates, there are actions you can take in order to prevent this co-living from happening. First, check your foundation for holes and cracks and seal them if you spot any. Second, you're going to need some mesh netting. Place it around all the utility openings that enter your home. These may be gas pipes, electrical boxes, and dryer exhausts. Also, if you live in a house and not an apartment, such a harmless thing as vegetation may also attract unwanted guests. So your shrubbery should be well trimmed, otherwise it risks becoming a bridge for rats and they'll have access to your house. There are also other things exterminators can do to prevent rat infestations. For example, they sometimes may add glass to concrete when patching holes. But experts say the most effective method to keep rodents at bay is to not share food with them, even unwillingly. It's easy to say, but in New York City, there's trash lined up in the street sometimes, so rats always have access to food. However, if these critters don't have easily accessible food, they'll just look for it somewhere else. And it's not just New York City. Furry critters are causing havoc all over the world, and New Zealand has decided to take on rats in a serious way. They created the Predator-Free 2050 program, aimed at not only kicking out rats, but also putting an end to other pesky invaders like possums and stoats. Big cities across the world are implementing measures to curb the rat population, such as changing trash disposal practices and securing food waste containers. But the problem persists. Rats can squeeze in spaces as thin as a pencil. As long as their skull fits in, they can squeeze in anywhere. So don't throw away garbage if your bin can't be properly sealed. Also, make sure the bins are clean, as rats are attracted to smells. If the bins in your neighborhood are dirty, contact the authorities. And if yours are dirty, better clean it up, otherwise someone might rat you out. Alright, you're scuba diving in the ocean, watching corals and colorful fish flitting by, when suddenly an enormous shadow appears above you. You look up and see a massive creature approaching you, its mouth a gaping abyss. Relax, just stay still and you'll be fine. This leviathan is a basking shark, one of the scary sea monsters that isn't really capable of doing harm to anyone. Basking sharks are filter feeders, just like baleen whales. They open their large mouths to swallow plankton, and don't even have teeth. It's late night in the Central American jungle. You're out in the wild to watch birds, and you hear flapping of wings. Excited, you look intently into your night vision goggles, only to see a face out of your worst nightmares. Don't scream, you'll scare it away. It's a perfectly harmless, wrinkle-faced bat, and it isn't interested in you. These are fruit bats, and wrinkles on their faces allow them to collect fruit pieces and juice for later snacks. By the way, their Latin name, Centuro senex, was given to them for their semblance to 100-year-old humans. Walking around a Nepali National Park and deciding to wash your face in the river nearby, you freeze in terror. A crocodile is looking straight at you from no more than a few feet's distance. Then, it raises its snout above the water, and you exhale in relief. It's a gharial. These reptiles have long and narrow snouts that allow them to efficiently catch fish and, at the same time, prohibiting them from hunting any other prey. While still carnivores, gharials are pretty shy and will slither away at the sight of humans. Right now, there are no more than 1,000 of these crocodilians in the whole world, so let it go. Especially if it's a girl gharial. You dig your garden in the backyard and notice something moving on your shovel. You take a closer look and drop the tool in horror. A small creature looking like a hostile alien is scurrying away into some burrow in the ground. No worries. It's just a star-nosed mole. These critters have peculiar snouts that look like they've been blown up from within. Their eyes are small and weak, so the star on their nose helps them a lot to move around and seek food. It's always on the move, touching everything it can reach as if the tendrils were tiny fingers. Oh, you're bathing in the ocean again. Well, look to your right. There's a real toothed shark going right at you. Nah, don't panic. It's just a sand tiger shark. Neither a sand nor a tiger one. It's a vulnerable fish-eating shark that slowly swims in the seas and chases its prey from time to time. There have been no reports of it ever attacking humans, but it still has rows of sharp teeth, so don't try to touch it just in case. It may seem placid, but you don't want it to get a bite out of you, do you? Okay, from ocean to desert. You're in Australia and longing for some water. You see a likely spot and start digging the ground, only to stumble upon a creature straight from the depths of neither, all covered in thorns. It eyes you suspiciously and slinks away because it's just a thorny devil. Despite its ominous name, this lizard is harmless to humans. Horn-like bumps on its skin are for protection from predators and birds of prey. The thorns are hard, but as long as you don't touch them, you're fine. Now, if you have arachnophobia, it won't calm you down. But tailless whip scorpions you might meet in North and South America, as well as Asia and Africa, are more afraid of you than you are of them. Tell yourself that. These nightmarish creatures don't have stingers and won't even bite when threatened. The worst they could do, and only if you corner them, why would you do that, is prick you with their front legs, leaving tiny puncture marks on your finger. Many people even keep them as pets, and they're quite affectionate toward their owners. Yeah. If you ever stumble upon a burrow from which a hairless, big-toothed creature is peeking at you, just don't mind it and let it be. Naked mole rats are the sphinx cats among rodents. They're close relatives of mole rats, but, well, naked. And they're fascinating in their own right, too. Thanks to living entirely underground, they're almost totally cold-blooded, but can conform to any temperature outside. And their flappy, wrinkled skin doesn't feel any pain at all. So pins and prickles, as well as sharp teeth, don't scare naked mole rats. You're once again lost in the jungle, this time on Madagascar. Poor you. The night has fallen, and you seek shelter. But when you think you've found a suitable tree to build a lean-to, you freeze in terror. A black, long-fingered hand appears on a tree branch right above you, and two huge yellow eyes are staring you down. Then you see a shaggy face and realize it's just a lemur, an aye-aye more precisely. This creature is native to Madagascar and only goes out at night, so you're lucky to see it. It fulfills a role of a woodpecker in tropical forests. It knocks on tree trunks to find bugs and uses its long, wizened fingers to reach inside. Tired of being scared, you seek your way home, but your horrors aren't over yet. There's a big red and white snake across your path. It hisses and lies in wait for you to move. You know it's a coral snake, a really dangerous, venomous kind. You stop in your tracks, and only when it finally slithers away, you realize it was actually a milk snake. They often mimic venomous ones, not only coral snakes, to protect themselves from predators. Still, if you're not a snake expert, it's always best to stay away. Okay, this creature will infest your darkest dreams. A giant African millipede. It's big, it's glossy black, and it has hundreds of tiny crawly legs. And yet, if it had googly eyes, it could even be cute. Perhaps that's why so many people keep them as pets. That, and because they commonly live up to 10 years. Giant millipedes can't really bite. Their only defense is curling into a tight ball and secreting irritating liquid from the pores of its skin. If you dare touch it, don't rub your eyes or nose afterwards. It's quite unpleasant. Goliath bird eater is another popular pet creepy crawler. It isn't dangerous for humans, despite it looking like your worst nightmare. This is one of the largest spiders in the world, and as its name implies, it sometimes hunts small birds for food. But they aren't part of its regular diet. The spider prefers worms and amphibians. Make sure you don't frighten it though. It can still bite or release hairs in self-defense. The bite is similar to a wasp sting, and hairs can cause severe irritation on your skin. But mostly, this gentle giant is just shy and will crawl away at the sight of you. Oh dear, there's another snake approaching you, and fast! You're about to turn and run when you see a hulking 8-legged form cutting into the snake's path and leaping on it. It's another arachnid, and it looks even more terrifying than the snake. It's a camel spider. Not really a spider, nor a scorpion. These creatures belong to a separate family. They became the stuff of many urban legends, but in fact, they don't even have any venom. Sure, they can bite, and their jaws are pretty powerful, but camel spiders can't do much more to a human than just bite. They hide in the sand and burrow to leap on unsuspecting lizards, invertebrates, and yes, even snakes. And now, picture a pill bug. Not exactly a beauty, but since it's small, it's okay. But what if it were 10 times as large? No, definitely not okay. Still, such a creature exists, and it's a giant isopod. Thankfully, it lurks in deep, dark, and cold waters, so it won't ever come up in your backyard. Giant isopods grow to such enormous size because of something called deep-sea gigantism. Deep-dwelling creatures have to endure great pressure of water, extreme cold temperatures, and scarce food, so their metabolism slows down. Isopods don't move much, and more often than not just lie in wait until some poor small bug or crustacean crawls within their reach and they can munch on it. And though it looks like a many-legged chaos from below, a giant isopod can hurt you even if it wanted to. Just pet it already.
These weird-looking blobs are not just some random jelly balls in the ocean. Those are some of the biggest organisms with just one cell you'll find on Earth. And they pop if you squeeze them. We're looking at a specific type of algae that can be as small as a pinhead and as big as an eyeball. Or better yet, sailor's eyeball, as they're usually called. How large it's going to be depends on what's in its vacuole, which is the space inside of its cell wall. This organism is made of just one cell, but it can have more than one nucleus. It's like it has many control centers in just one cell. This happens because these organisms are zoonocytic, which means they're made up of a bunch of nuclei that don't have walls that would separate them. These are not some mythical creatures hidden at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Divers around the world who like to explore coral reefs can stumble upon them. These algae come in different colors, such as black, bright green, or silvery. Their color depends on how their cell walls are set. In some cases, researchers stumbled upon a shiny orb on the seafloor that looked like a golden egg. The interesting thing is that the egg had a hole in it. So the question was if something had tried to get out or into this orb. Hopefully, it was just a jelly blob minding its own business. Normally, cells don't grow this big. It would mess up their balance. If something's too big, the ratio of surface area to volume won't be optimal anymore. But sailors' eyeballs have their own trick to end up this large. There are different parts inside them, and each has its own chloroplasts and nucleus. If you were to pop one of these jelly blobs, it wouldn't just burst like a balloon. Instead, it would probably pop up because they only need one nucleus for a whole new eyeball to grow. All this means is it would be hard to have them in aquariums, but they can at least live peacefully in the ocean, hoping no one will pop them. Now the question is, if a one-cell thing can grow to be this big, how large can real living beings get? The biggest animal that has ever walked on our planet was probably a dinosaur called Argentinosaurus, a giant that lived around 90 million years ago. We can compare it to the heaviest land creature we have today, the African elephant. It weighs less than 7 tons. Gigantic for us, it would look like a bug next to the Argentinosaurus, which weighed around 77 tons. They both look small next to the blue whale though, with a weight of 165 tons. That's probably the heaviest animal that has ever lived on Earth. In theory, and according to the laws of physics, creatures that live on land can gain up to 120 tons. There's a mathematical principle that explains why animals can't grow indefinitely. It says the ratio of two volumes is greater than the ratio of their surfaces. It means that as some creature gets bigger, not all of its parts get bigger at the same rate. If the elephant gets 3 times as wide, tall, and long, its overall size will also increase. But its mass will increase way more than that. It means the volume will grow faster than the surface of the animal's body. That's why bigger animals need much larger limbs to support their weight. The problem is that limbs probably won't be strong enough to carry such an enormous weight. The only way our imaginary giant elephant could move such a heavy body is by having extremely big and thick legs, just to walk, let alone do other things. Physics is not the only element that sets size limits. Otherwise, we'd have to be very careful not to end up under giant, wide feet of 100-ton animals wandering around. Another important thing is whether there's enough food for them, because these giants certainly need a lot of it. It's not just quantity, of course. Creatures can only grow bigger when they live in productive environments with high-quality foods rich in nutrients. That probably explains why certain reptiles, such as titanosaurs, grew way bigger than, for example, the biggest mammals that roamed terrestrial areas. Warm-blooded mammals have faster metabolisms. That means they need around 10 times more food to support their body sizes than reptiles do. Reptiles not only have slower metabolisms, but they also have lower body temperatures, so they can eat less and still feel satisfied. And they'll grow big anyway, since they don't burn their calories that quickly. No wonder that the biggest dinosaurs that walked on land were 10 times larger than the biggest mammals. Now, blue whales are kinda exceptions to all these rules. They're warm-blooded mammals, but when you live in the ocean, being a giant is not a big problem. It's easier to be very large in the water because it takes away lots of stress and pressure from your bones and muscles. And that's something land animals can't avoid. That way, blue whales can swim around and look for food the whole day. They can just casually open their mouth and let zooplankton come in. So yeah, our planet has proven it can handle mega creatures because, for hundreds of millions of years, some of them walked on land, not just swam in the ocean. But in the last 20,000 years, most of them have vanished. Big land mammals such as rhinos and elephants exist only in some parts of the world, and their numbers are getting lower. There are fewer whales than before, and for these, or some other giant animals to evolve that big again, humans would have to step back. We may not have gigantic dinosaurs, but some of the creatures living in today's world are still surprisingly and dangerously big, like the saltwater crocodile, the biggest reptile in the world. A male can grow up to 23 feet and weigh about 2,200 pounds. That's not the only scary thing about them. They have the second most powerful bite on the planet, right behind that of the Nile crocodile. The title of the largest bird on Earth belongs to the ostrich. It has wings, but they're too short for flying. The animal holds them outstretched when it runs, and this way it stays balanced more easily. Plus, their body is too big for flying anyway. That's why evolution had to give them some other advantage, like being able to run very fast. Don't make an ostrich upset unless you can run faster than 40 miles per hour in short sprints or at least 30 miles per hour over longer distances. In just one stride, this bird can cover up to 16 feet, which is how long a mid-sized family car is. Don't underestimate these fellas just because they're birds. They have very strong legs they use for self-defense. They can kick with a force that would take down even a lion. You wouldn't expect turtles to grow this big and to look so mean, but somehow, alligator snapping turtles still manage to surprise us. With jaws that look like beaks, spiked shells, and thick, scaled tails, they really look like the dinosaur of the turtle world, or the main enemy from Super Mario games. They love to spend their time in lakes, rivers, and canals of the southeastern United States and live for up to 100 years. They have chemosensory organs in their necks, which means they can smell using their throats. That helps a lot because their eyes aren't much of use in the murky waters where they live. Instead, they just draw water into their throat in a specific method we call gular pumping. To get samples of the water around them they want to smell.
No one expected such a strong storm. It's too dangerous to sail back to the land because of high waves and winds. But suddenly, you notice a small green island nearby. You and your friend are about 25 miles off the coast of Brazil. You were fishing and didn't notice black clouds obscuring the blue sky. You're approaching the unknown island and see a Coast Guard boat behind you. People from there are screaming something to you, but you can't make out the words because of the thunder. They tell us we should stay away from that island, your friend says. Despite the warning, you still sail since there's no other way out. Around the island, you notice sharp rocks sticking out of the water like knives in the dark. Now you realize what the Coast Guard warned about, but it's too late. Your boat hits a rock. The bottom is pierced. You start to sink. The rain and wind are getting stronger. Both of you fall overboard. Then darkness comes. You wake up in the morning because of the scorching sun and a dry mouth. Your friend and the wrecked boat are lying nearby. Apparently, you'll have to wait for rescuers to get out here. Now, in the light of day, you can see how dangerous the island's coast is. It's surrounded by rocks, and you're lucky you've survived. Getting out of here will be difficult. Together with your companion, you decide to look for coconuts and bananas. Your friend goes to the wreckage and pulls out a bag of medicine. Then, both of you leave the sandy beach and enter the dense jungle. A couple of steps later, you hear a strange hiss. You see your friend. His eyes are filled with horror. Goosebumps run down your back. You feel something alive crawling under your feet, and there's a lot of it. You look down and notice slithering snakes. There are dozens of them. They wrap around your legs, get into trees. They're everywhere. Don't move, your friend says. I think I know where we are. You want to ask him a question, but fear takes away your voice. He reads your face and answers the question. We're in one of the most dangerous places on Earth, the Brazilian Snake Island. These are not just some ordinary snakes. This is the golden lancehead, one of the most venomous reptiles in the world. You can find them nowhere else on the planet except for this land. They evolved here naturally, without other snake species intervention. That made their venom 5 times stronger than the venom of ordinary vipers. They're practically the only owners of this island. Nowhere else in the world will you find such a concentration of creeping reptiles on such a small piece of land. And now, they're glad that 2 big lunch meals have arrived. There's little chance of survival, but you're gonna try. The first thing you need to do is get out of your stupor and find a thick stick. This is your best tool right now. If you encounter a venomous snake, the best you can do is retreat slowly. But this time, there are too many of them. They're aggressive and hungry. Together with your friend, you fight off the snakes with a stick. But there's more and more of them coming. One of them falls on your shoulder from a tree and bites your neck. The poison instantly enters your bloodstream and affects your muscles. It feels like your body is melting. It becomes difficult to move, and your neck swells. Your friend grabs you and carries you deep into the jungle. Here, among the trees, you notice an old lighthouse. Yeah, this building really stands out here. Once a year, the Coast Guard visits it. Your friend breaks down the door and puts you on the floor. You're afraid you won't be able to survive the bite. Fortunately, your friend is a doctor. He injects the necessary medicine and saves your life. You have a few minutes to rest before more danger arises. Your friend tells you that the unique snakes appeared here thousands of years ago. This island was part of Brazil for a long time. Then, massive floods separated it from the continent. This part of the land was cut off from the whole world, which helped the formation of a unique ecosystem inside. Vipers that lived here evolved into golden lanceheads. They quickly became the main masters of the island and destroyed all the other animals. But how did they manage to survive without food, cut off from the whole world? They did it thanks to nature and evolution. This island is a transit point for many birds. They stop here to rest during long flights. These birds become dinner for the snakes. Previously, a snake bite almost didn't harm the birds. They were frightened and flew away, leaving the snake without food. But over years of evolution, the island's owners have developed such a potent poison that one bite was enough for a bird to never take off again. There's also a legend that a pirate hid treasures here a long time ago. And, so that no one would ever find it, he brought snakes to guard his gold. Of course, there's no chest with coins here, but the island is attractive for modern pirates, even today. Golden lancehead snakes are an expensive commodity, so bad people often visit this place to hunt the reptiles. That's why the Coast Guard is always on duty around the island. People are forbidden to visit this place. And even if someone manages to get past the guards, they will have to face the rocks. Only biologists and scientists have permission to study the local fauna. A necessary condition for a visit is a doctor's presence in the team, so they can save people from the snake's poison. So we have pirates and hordes of poisonous snakes, but there's something else that makes the island even worse. At this moment, you hear rustling all over the building. Thousands of little paws are tapping on the walls and floor. You look around and see lots of giant cockroaches. Some of them are half the size of your palm. They crawl under your clothes. You and your friends scream in fear and run out of the lighthouse. Quickly, you reach the shore and fall into the water. It seems that not a single cockroach is left under your shirt. But that's not all. You hear a strange buzzing sound. You look around and see a dark cloud of flying beetles forming in the sky. It's locusts! Thousands of flying insects are heading in your direction. To avoid a collision, you dive under the water and wait for the cloud to pass by. You go up to the surface and move to the shore. Fortunately, there are almost no snakes here. You and your friend are afraid to approach the jungle and wait for several hours until rescuers arrive. You're nervously painting a pattern on the sand and make a promise that you'll never revisit this place. Finally, you see the lifeguard boat. You're trying to tell them you got here by accident. They believe you and evacuate you from the island. While you're sailing away, you think about what would happen if many poisonous snakes appeared in a village or a small town. It's difficult to imagine what kind of problems people would face. But in fact, there's no need to imagine anything. There is a place on the planet where locals live next to poisonous cobras, but it doesn't create any chaos. A human can live in peace and harmony with reptiles in that village. Welcome to Shetpal village in India. This place has a population of about 2,600, and it's located in the jungle. It's hot here. Locals are friendly and responsive. If you go into one of the houses, you'll see something that seems impossible. The king cobra, whose venom is one of the most dangerous in the world, calmly crawls around furniture and eats eggs and meat that people give. There's even a special corner for the reptile to relax from the scorching sun, drink water, and have a snack. People are happy about the cobra, as if it was a pet. In the village, cobras are everywhere. They come into houses and schools, crawl through the streets, and keep company during dinner. The locals consider them full-fledged residents. They adore them. The snakes are also used to people and don't see them as dangerous. The coolest thing is there has never been a tragic case in the village because of a poisonous bite. There's no other place in the world where cobras live in such harmony with people.